We are live. We're live, Mr. Mayor.
You're live, Mr. Mayor.
I think he's frozen.
Am I frozen?
Yes, not anymore.
Okay, let's try this again. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the first council meeting of 2021 on Monday, January the 25th. Due to COVID-19 and the province of Ontario's stay-at-home order, which is in effect for all of Ontario, City Hall is not open except for very limited services by appointment only. Members of the public are invited to participate in this meeting electronically by accessing the meeting live stream video at kitchener.ca/watchnow. While in-person delegation requests are not feasible at this time, members of the public were invited to submit any written comments by contacting delegations@kitchener.ca. Written comments have been circulated prior to the meeting and will form part of the public record. As we begin this evening's meeting, we'd like to acknowledge that today we gather on the traditional territory of the Neutral, Anishinaabe, and Haudenosaunee peoples. We recognize our responsibility to serve as stewards for the land and honor the original caretakers who came before us. Our community is enriched by the enduring knowledge and deep-rooted traditions of the diverse First Nations, Métis, and Inuit in Kitchener today. And now I'd like to invite everyone, as they're able, at home or, well, wherever, I guess everyone should be at home, for the singing of our national anthem. And just remind members of council as you stand to just turn your video off for that moment in time. Colleagues, as we begin this evening's meeting, I'd like to also acknowledge that today marks 1 year since the announcement of the first diagnosed case of COVID-19 in Canada, and 10 months since all of the municipalities in Waterloo Region declared a state of emergency. In Waterloo Region, we've had 9,027 cases of COVID-19 thus far, and 191 people have lost their lives due to this virus and global pandemic. I'd like to take a moment today to acknowledge all of our healthcare professionals working in our area hospitals and in the healthcare sector, countless healthcare practices in public health and throughout the community, our doctors, our nurses, our personal support workers, and others who have worked tirelessly over the past 10 plus months in helping our community address COVID-19. I'd also like to acknowledge our first responders, the women and men of the Kitchener Fire Department, the Waterloo Region Police Service, and of course, the Region of Waterloo EMS Service, who have been most directly impacted in terms of first response. Our City of Kitchener staff team, who has worked tirelessly over the past 10 months, starting with our leadership group, all the way through to those who deliver services at our communities, working to ensure that our community's needs are being met during the past 10 months. And I'd also like to acknowledge so many other essential workers and continues to ensure that those rest of us can stay safe. I would, at this point, ask that we take a minute of silence to acknowledge the 191 people who have lost their lives due to the virus and global pandemic and all of their affected families in our community. We can pause for a moment of silence. Finally, I would like to take this opportunity at the beginning of the meeting to remind everyone to stay at home during this provincial emergency order of the stay-at-home order. If you do need to go out, certainly you can go out if your work requires you to. If you have a medical appointment or if you need to go out for groceries or other essential needs. And you can also go out for exercise in your own area. But we want to remind everyone that as you do that, please ensure that you practice good public health practices, including of our agenda.
Mr. Mayor, just to interrupt you, you keep pausing and we can't hear you, and then you go frozen for a little while. So there's been a few pauses already.
Okay, thank you. We'll I don't know what my problem is with the internet, but we'll do the best we can to get through this. Thank you. I'll try turning my screen off. Maybe that will help. It's been moved by Councillor Gazzola that the minutes of the regular meeting held December 14th, 2020, and the special meetings held December 14th, 2020, January 14th, 2021, and January 18th, 2021, as mailed to the mayor and councillors be accepted. All in favor? That's carried. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? There being none, unless otherwise directed, I shall refer the communications as listed on the agenda, and there is none. There are no presentations, and we'll now go into delegations. I will remind delegations that you have 5 minutes to make your presentation, and then we'll take any questions from council afterwards. Our first delegation is Mr. Pierre Chauvin from Vive Corporation regarding Development Services Department Report DSD 21-008, listed as item B4 on the Committee of the Whole agenda. Mr. Chauvin.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I'm Pierre Chauvin with MHBC Planning. Really just here in support of the report, and I want to take this opportunity to thank your staff, in particular Garrett Stevenson, who's been awaiting this passing for some time as well. I think it's almost been a year since this bylaw was before you. Happy to report that the official plan amendment has been approved and is non-appealable. And really at this point, this is implementing the official plan amendment that you previously approved. So with that, I will turn it over and just here in support of the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chauvin. Are there any questions Councillor Marsh.
Yes, thank you. So it's my understanding then that the building location has shifted a little bit, and in order to reduce the need for a retaining wall. Can you just explain how that's going to impact the property line and which property line does that affect?
Yeah,
Mr. Chauvin.
yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, there was through the site plan approval process, we had to shift the building. It's not changing the building essentially in its form. I'm trying to recall which property line that is, so if you bear with me, and perhaps maybe Garrett can explain that. It's been a while, to be frank, since we've dealt with this site plan. It is at the rear portion of the property where we had to pull it allowed us to reduce the retaining wall as well. So
well, is it along where the driveway is the question, or is it the other side?
No, this is at the rear of the property.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, the driveway is along the frontage of the property, so this would be on a complete opposite end of the property at the rear.
Okay, thank you. I'll have a question of staff then. Thank
Sure.
you.
Councillor Gazzola.
No, my only question is, I remember us talking about this many, many moons ago. I wonder if someone can just fill me in. What has happened between the time we were discussing this and now? Because it seems like it was forever. Can someone just bring us up to date as to what has changed now?
If I may, Mr. Mayor, really nothing has changed dramatically from what you've heard previously almost a year ago. What happened was COVID, really. We had to, and when everything went essentially into abeyance for a while, we got delayed there. And then it took a while to get the official plan amendment to the region. And there was also, as you know, an outstanding appeal on Crosby that there was a hearing scheduled almost a year ago in February, which got delayed because of COVID. That got reheard, or a hearing happened in December of 2020 and cleared the path essentially for this bylaw to finally come forward back to you for 3 readings. So there was been some delays from COVID, and also as a result of Crosby coming into being delayed and coming now into effect.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that.
Okay, those appear to be all the questions that we have of you, Mr. Chauvin. Councillor Marsh? Councillor Marsh?
Yes, hi.
Go ahead.
Is Mr. Stevenson available to, I'd just like to ask, my understanding is that there were retaining walls on both sides along this side of the building where there is the driveway, and then the other side that backs onto Weber. And so I'm just trying to understand, where is there no longer a retaining wall, and how does that affect the neighbors?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, a larger retaining wall was originally proposed in order to have the most rear portion of the building to be below grade, which is housing internal parking. With the revision to the building design, that part of the building has actually been removed, and there is surface parking at the back of the property. And therefore, the grade does not need to be artificially raised. So there are some retaining walls that will be required along 435, 441, 449, and 455 East Avenue, but the height of those walls has been greatly reduced. The benefit to the shorter retaining wall in this location is that we are able to accommodate a visual barrier in the form of both a wood fence as well as larger stature landscaping, because the landscaping will not be adjacent to a larger wall. It'll have a better success rate, and we'll be able to have a greater variety of landscape to act as a buffer.
Okay, so it's going to be you're saying that the structure that's being built will now be a little bit lower than it was going to be? And so now it's going to, and so before there was a retaining wall that was made the properties adjacent lower. And so now they're a little lower, but not as much. And so just in terms of headlights from the parking, etc., those will not be seen because the fence will still protect any visual pollution, right? Light pollution.
That is correct. The parking will be, although it will be located externally in a surface parking lot, it was previously located on what would be the main floor. It's being brought down an entire story. And then that is more in line with the rear yard elevations of the adjacent houses. And then therefore we could have landscaping and a visual barrier to buffer headlight glare as you know.
Okay, super. Thank you.
No problem.
Great. Does somebody want to move this? Moved by Councillor Ioannidis, thank you. Seconded by Councillor Singh. Any discussion? All those in favor? Oh, sorry, discussion, Councillor Singh.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't want to take up too much time of council. Just a quick comment I do want to make that, it's taken some time for this application to finally come to a conclusion with various different revisions and extensive community consultation. And the reason why I wanted to make a point is that currently the development is proposed for a rental development. And as we are experiencing a compounded affordability issue in our community for both being able to purchase a home or even for rental, developments such as these that bring additional inventory, especially in the rental market, is well received. And I would only encourage the applicant's consultant through Pierre that encouragement that this development proceed forward in the quickest so that this housing supply comes to market sooner than later as it's much needed. Thank you.
Okay, great. So all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you, Mr. Chauvin. Our next delegation is Laura. Actually, hold on. The clerk is, it appears, that Miss Laura Lave is not here. Council, Mr. Bunn has just circulated some brief comments from Miss Lave to you, and so you may want to reference those if she doesn't come back on before the end of the meeting. Our next delegation then is Brody Barth, who is the applicant with respect to this application. Mr. Barth, welcome.
There we are.
Hello.
Hi there. This is our first time addressing council, so you have to forgive us if we speak out of line. But thank
Don't
you.
worry. Don't be nervous at all. We're all figuring this virtual thing out too.
Okay, it is a little daunting, so any and all patience is much appreciated. My name is Brody Barth. This is my partner, Emily Shermans. We're here to support, it's a heritage permit application 2021-4-001. That permit application was before the Heritage Committee on January 5th. And there were some concerns voiced by some members of that committee. I believe my written submission has been circulated. I apologize if it's far too long. It certainly could have been longer, but I didn't really know what to do or how much to omit or include. And I assume that any and all questions, I can answer them to the best of my ability should they arise. I think that's pretty well it for now. If anyone has any questions at the outset.
Okay, let's see. There don't appear to be any. Oh, there is. Councillor Davey.
Yes, thank you. Thank you guys for showing up, making your presentation. I know, again, the document you sent does speak for itself, but just touching upon if I could, just some of the issues. Can you remind council what the difference is between, in terms of cost, between what the Heritage Committee had proposed versus what is being asked for?
So I should clarify that the Heritage Committee actually is in support of our motion, as well as the city heritage planner. The committee member had an issue with, in particular, our proposition to replace the existing wood windows with vinyl windows that replicate those that are existing to the best of our ability. And the cost, the committee member that had an issue with our proposition suggested that we source some additional, basically get some more quotes from local Mennonite builders. So I've gone ahead and done that. And if you have that written submission in front of you and you turn to page 3, at the bottom, you'll see the quote that I received from a Mr. Rory McDonald. And his windows are sourced from Webwood Windows. And I actually spoke with the gentleman who owns Webwood Windows just to find out about his craftsmanship and the materials he uses. But in any event, the summary cost for those windows is approximately $162,000. Whereas, and I have included, you'll have to forgive me, we had received an estimate from a company which included doors as well, but I removed the doors to make it easier for everyone to see. And that price for vinyl windows came in at $36,273. So it's considerably lower, and that figure is on page 10. And I've also attached a photo of a window that we had that company produce alongside basically the one that it would replace on the home for your reference.
Yeah, thank you. That was helpful. So, and the only other part I think is important to touch upon is the maintenance. Now, you indicated that wood windows have higher maintenance requirements than vinyl.
Yeah. So I'm a contractor by trade. I've been in the industry now for about 10 years. I've worked under a custom home builder who did work on the Sims Estate property. So I have some understanding of the heritage process. But I wanted to do some research into, basically I needed to understand the ongoing maintenance requirements of wood windows, because we're not inherently opposed to wood windows. I mean, obviously there are some major cost constraints there. But if we were able to mitigate those in some way, then we're not necessarily opposed. But I had a conversation with my painter, and I won't bore you with all the numbers, but on average, we're looking at around $36,000 every 7.5 years for ongoing maintenance for wood windows.
And there, as I recall, there's something like 40 to 45 you would have to replace?
There are 45 windows.
45.
There are several, the majority of them are on the second story, which adds some additional cost constraints, which I outlined a little bit in my written submission, as well as I think 4 that are in the attic, which are even more difficult to work on, basically.
Okay. So, very good. Sir, last question. Have you ever owned a heritage home before, or is this the first time you've ever acquired one?
So as far as a heritage property designated under Part 4, this is number 1. I grew up on Heinz Ave, right across from Victoria Park, in a century home there. So I'm familiar with that. And Emily, the entrepreneur that she is, actually bought her first house when she was 18 from the proceeds of a Kijiji hustle. And that home was built in 1895. Which she subsequently restored and actually just sold.
Yeah, it's time to move on, I guess.
Time to move on. We need money for Shirk, 38 Shirk, basically. So we're familiar with old homes. This is the first heritage home designated under Part 4 that we own.
Okay, very good. Thank you guys for coming and making your presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Davey.
Councillor Ioannidis.
Thank you, Mayor Urbanek, and thank you for coming in for your presentation. Unfortunately, I don't know where I misplaced your email. I looked at it earlier today.
Sure.
Anyways, so my understanding is from the cost, your lowest estimate from a wood kind to the PVC or vinyl would be roughly about $130,000 difference.
So
Yeah.
it's important to note, there is a breadth of quality when it comes to wood windows. The wood windows that we got a quote for is of I would say a higher mid-range wood window. It's also important to note that inferior wood windows, they're not viable. They're not made of the same material that our forefathers would have used to make windows. And as such, the wood windows that we've proposed, they're made of an Akoya product, which is effectively a treated wood product.
Okay. So aesthetically wise, would they look similar?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The grill patterns that are of note in the heritage designated bylaw make specific note of the windows as 8/12, 12/12, 6/6, and our manufacturer is able to replicate that grill pattern. If you were able to see your email, you'd see the example there on page 10.
Okay. And then my other question. So you're saying those windows, are they more efficient than the wood ones, or they're roughly the same?
So based on what my research has shown, the wood windows in conjunction with storm windows perform very similarly to modern day vinyl windows. So it's less of an efficiency argument than it is a cost constraint argument.
In the maintenance, every 7.5 years, you're essentially paying for a whole set of new windows. And our painter that we trust that has actually done some work on some heritage homes told us that he would never do the job for us.
Yeah.
Because he did 4 windows and it took him a week.
Okay.
So yeah. Trying to find someone to do that.
It sounds kind of ridiculous to me, but anyways, the other thing, and I don't want to get too much into your details, but if you were to go based on those wood windows, like compared to what you purchased your house for, like what?
Not good.
Do you want me to give you the percentage?
Yeah, like if you don't mind, like, I mean, because that's really the real perspective here to me.
It would be 23% of the cost of the home and the property.
Okay, so that sets it straight for me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just as an aside, I should clarify that quote doesn't include storm windows. So to your point about efficiency, there would be an additional cost associated with getting those up to modern day Windows standards.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your questions.
Councillor Schneider.
Thank you, Mayor Urbanek, and welcome, Brody and Emily. Just for my own interest, and help us maybe with a little perspective, can you describe kind of the location where Shirk Place is? Is it in a highly visible area?
No, it's not. It is located, if you're familiar with the Lancaster Smokehouse.
Mm-hmm.
So I believe it's Shirk Place where it meets Lancaster, and then as it rounds the bend, I think it turns into Woolwich. So if you come down Shirk, it's right across from Lancaster Smokehouse. And then as you make that bend to go up the hill towards Bridle Trail, our laneway is up around the corner, and it's tucked away behind a multitude of large black walnut trees.
And so we actually lived for years, probably a 5 to 10 minute walk from there. And we didn't even know this place existed.
No.
So you can't actually really see it from the road unless you go up onto the top, because it's really hidden. And most people don't take that road either. So it's quite quiet.
Would it kind of be safe to say that you probably wouldn't go down that street unless you lived on it?
Yeah, or as a shortcut, sometimes people take it
Yeah.
to do that. Yeah. But it's
Okay. And may I ask, what drew you to purchase this building?
It's
beautiful.
like its aesthetic appeal is astonishing. I don't know. I didn't personally, I think, include any photos. I maybe should have.
There's some photos in the email that you sent. Are those like recent, the interior ones? Are they recent pictures or are they from?
Yeah, that's what we bought it as. Like it needs a full overhaul on everything. Roof, like exterior needs a lot of money, and then interior needs. It's a fourplex, so what our goal is to live in one, and then for the first little bit rent it out to other people. But the end goal is to have our family. So his parents are getting older, and we kind of want it to be a place where we're all in there and enjoying, because we all love older homes, and it's on about an acre lot. So
my dad lives there already in one of those more slummy units.
Okay.
But
well, that's nice to hear that you want to do some rental, which is, as you heard maybe earlier, it's quite necessary in our area.
Absolutely, it's not enough.
That's pretty much it for me. Thanks for coming in, and really appreciate your thorough report. It was very informative. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Chapman.
Yes. Hi again. Yeah, I just wanted to ask, and maybe I missed this in reading what your comments. If the wood windows were preserved and storms put on, would that reduce the maintenance fees every year because they'd be protected from the elements?
So the storm windows would still require their own maintenance unless they themselves were maybe vinyl or aluminum or something. But then, I mean, much of the aesthetic is kind of lost then, I would think.
The vinyl, there's some storm windows on some of the actual windows there, and it's not appealing at all. Like the whole character is gone. So we really don't want to have to put storm windows in, but we kind of have to if we had to do the wood window option.
Okay. My other question is, what do you think the impact of the heritage value of the house is by changing the windows? Like you've got experience with heritage homes, right? So
Sure.
What's that? What impact do you think that will have? I mean, I understand that this is the only home of this vintage and this style in the whole region. Is that correct?
Well, during the committee meeting, Victoria Groen mentioned that she wasn't certain whether or not that were true. She did attest to the fact that they are limited, but she didn't actually say one way or another if it's the only one. I certainly have never seen another one quite like it, so it may very well be. And I'm sure that if there was another one, it would probably also be Part 4 designation. So it's likely the case that it is the only one. As far as affecting the heritage value of the property, I don't know that replacing the windows that are beyond repair with new wood windows would not do the same thing, or vinyl. I don't know the difference there. You're removing something that is 2 centuries old. There's an email submission in my written submission from Mr. Rory McDonnell, who is actually listed on the Architectural Conservancy of Ontario, North Waterloos Region Heritage Planner, basically contractors list. And I got him to go by the property because I wanted his opinion on whether or not the windows were in a state of beyond repair. And his email is on page 6, in which he, and I'll quote, "Although I am sure they could be restored, I think they are beyond economical restoration due to the level of rot." I should clarify that he was number 6 of the window manufacturers to echo that sentiment. So yeah, the windows are beyond repair based on the ACO, North Waterloo Region's own heritage contractors assessment.
Right. I mean, I understand that, you know, the cost to preserve it. I guess my only question was, what do you see how would that impact the heritage value of the home? Like if you look at it, try to look at it a bit objectively, do you think that reduces the heritage value of the home?
I personally don't think so. And I think that the Bread and Roses building on Cortlandt and Queen is an evident example of how it isn't impacted whatsoever. All of those windows were swapped to vinyl. That building is intact. It's a beautiful landmark for downtown Kitchener. It's just down the street from where we live now. We had a hard time discerning that they actually were vinyl when we drove by, and we did drive by. So as far as how it's impacted, I would say it's negligible, particularly because the bylaw itself mentions the grow patterns as being relevant, and we intend to replicate those grow patterns.
Okay, thank you.
Sure, thank you.
Brody and Emily, that appears to be all the questions from members of council. I just have one myself, and I too want to thank you for coming in and for being interested in this property. I guess my question is, if council were not to have this, to approve this with the vinyl windows, does it essentially make the project unviable, and you would potentially have to revisit your investment in this property?
In short, yeah. So that was part and parcel to why I included those photos of the interior, to illustrate the degree of degradation that not only the exterior of the building has experienced, but also the interior. It is in a serious state of disrepair. Our structural engineer walked through the basement with me, and there are some concerning things that have been done to make sure that it is still standing, and it is still standing, but we'd like to make sure that it keeps standing for at least another 200 years.
And so, in fact, your investment in this property and your desire to update it will play a pivotal role in helping ensure that it perhaps doesn't get to the point where it no longer is repairable. Correct?
Yeah, I would say that without question, our goal is to make sure that it lasts for a long time. And right now, I don't know if I'd say that it's on its last legs, but it's getting close.
Yeah, the previous.
Yes, sorry, go ahead, Emily.
I was just say the previous owners had owned it since 1973, I believe, and they hadn't done one thing to it. And you can see over time what that does, even in the basement. We're getting water in the basement, and water is not a friendly thing for a home, especially of this age. And you can even see the brick from the wood. The wood's soaking up the water in from the windows, and it's just deteriorating the brick underneath the windows. And like, that's why the windows and the roof was the first thing we need to do ASAP, because that's what's making this place fall apart.
Well, effectively putting money into any sort of restoration on the inside is kind of rendered moot when it's not protected from the Canadian winter, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So we have a tough winter here. So
absolutely. Well, listen, thank you very much both for coming in. Certainly much appreciated.
Thank you.
Okay, our next delegation is Jean Hallboom. Ms. Hallboom?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I too have trouble with all this technical machinery. I'm not very comfortable on the Zoom yet. I thank you. Well, my name is Jean Hallboom, 1165 Doon Village Road, Kitchener's where I live. And tonight I'm asking for an amendment or modification, so to speak, and deferral concerning the Heritage Kitchener Committee motion for 38 Shirk Place in the former Bridgeport. Although the motion includes wording, supplementary information, you as a council and we, the public, have no defined information as to what is to be done as a result of the heritage permit. For this heritage designated permit, 38 Shirk Place is the 1840 Shoemaker House. It is an excellent early Georgian style, Waterloo County Georgian style. It's a rare example of a substantial merchant's dwelling for this entrepreneur, Jacob Shoemaker. The Shoemaker House is, and it was asked, how many are there? It is the last, and I emphasize the last and only remaining example, rare in the city of Kitchener, if not the region. The Shoemaker House is the last of its type and its age 1840. It has survived for 180 years. So thank you, staff. The slide 1 shows you about the shoemaker entrepreneur. In front of you is the Shoemaker Mill Complex. How did this Shoemaker House come to be? Well, in 1829, Shoemaker, an entrepreneur from Pennsylvania, built a dam and sawmill. And by 1835, he had added a flour mill, a woolen mill, linseed oil, distillery, blacksmith shop, and he also had over 400 acres of land to farm. So by 1840, he built this house. And if you look in the slide, you will see up on the right-hand side, this house, up on the embankment. If I could have slide 2. Here we have a photo from the Mennonite Archives of Ontario, and it shows the Shoemaker House. I want you to note the dormers with the wooden horizontal siding. The size and the treatment of the areas surrounding the openings and the windows of the dormers. And these dormers are 6/6. The applicants for the heritage permit want to restore them. Congratulations, excellent. For this reason, I ask you, Council, to note the size, the proportion, and the detail in the photo for the basis for restoration. Slide 3, please. And here is a sketch in a Waterloo Region tourist guide commissioned for the Canada Trust Company. And these sketches of the Shoemaker House are done by an architect, John Martin. Here, if you look at, there's a close-up of the dormer detail. Again, the windows 6/6. But then if you look at, there's a letter A, and then you go to the A, the close-up of the headers of the dormers, you will see that there's a half moon or a fan window detail. The fan is a wood shape above the 6/6 windows. And I would say that each pane of the glass is about 8 inches by 10 inches. The dormers had a purpose, not just for decoration, but it allowed light into the attic. The attic was used for storage of the products from the mill. And this attic floor is superb. It's a big surprise, probably acted like a firewall because it's made out of brick and it goes from end to end and side to side. And this floor of the attic was where Shoemaker stored his mill products. If I could just turn back to slide 2. As you can see, the roof was of wood shingles, but we're not asking for restoration. What we are asking is that it be replaced with a metal roof with a standing seam, and that it be, if you like, charcoal gray or gray brown, which is age appropriate for this style of the house. And now I'd like to turn to windows. In Historic Places Canada, the website, a character defining element of this house are the windows, the wood frame windows. They're double hung. In the center, you will notice a very strong, outstanding bar with the smaller panes on either side of this bar. And they're double hung, so they open nice and evenly, and you get lots of ventilation. The windows are designated, and under the Ontario Heritage Act, designated features must be replaced by the same material or a replacement of similar material. Just think, here we have an 180-year collection of glass, original glass. So I'm not going to spend much more time on these windows. I have experience with restoration of windows if you have questions for me. But I know there are two other delegations, my colleagues from the Architectural Conservancy of Ontario, who have more expertise with information and experience restoring them. But I'd like to ask that I can present my resolution for the modification of the resolution along with a proposal for the deferral. And I don't expect it to be dealt with right now, but here it goes. Pursuant to Section 33 of Ontario Heritage Act, Heritage Permit Application HBA 2021-4001 be approved as set out in Development Services DS 21001 to permit the replacement of the roof, restoration of roof dormers, and construction of a second-story rear addition on the property municipally addressed as 38 Shirk Place in accordance with the plans and supplementary information submitted and be modified subject to the following conditions. The proposed metal roof be finished as a standing seam roof, gray-brown color resembling the original age wooden cedar shingle roof. Proposed dormers be completed with the same proportions, cladding, exterior, and window details shown on the photograph of the Shoemaker House from the Mennonite Archives of Ontario. The proposed addition be modified to include the restoration of the existing porch feature, which was included in the application shown to Heritage Kitchener. And final building permit drawings be reviewed and heritage clearance provided by Heritage planning staff prior to the issuance of a building permit. And pursuant to Section 33 of the Ontario Heritage Act, Heritage Permit Application HBQ 2021 IV1 for proposed replacement of windows on the property municipally addressed as 38 Shirk Place be deferred to the March meeting of council. Thank you.
Gave you a little bit of extra time there. Councillor Schneider.
Thank you, Mayor. Jean, thank you for coming tonight. I read over the minutes of the Heritage meeting that was recently held there. And the Heritage Committee passed the motion that in pursuant to Section 33 of the Ontario Heritage Act, Heritage Permit Application HPA 2021 IV 001 be approved as outlined in Development Services Department Report DSD 21001 to permit the replacement of the roof, replacement of windows, restoration of roof dormers, and construction of a second-story rear addition on the property municipally addressed at 38 Shirk Place in accordance with the plans and supplementary information submitted with the application and subject to the following condition: that final building permit drawings be reviewed and heritage clearance provided by Heritage planning staff prior to the issuance of a building permit. So if in the Heritage meeting, this was already passed and moved, why are you coming here and asking this to be changed?
Am I on?
Yes, go ahead.
I felt that there was discussion, there was presentation by the ACO rep. I presented rep. There was back and forth with respect to the applicant, but there was no clear indication of what was going to happen. Clearly, the appropriateness for this particular roof, metal roof, we're not saying it can't be metal because this is a replacement material, but what we are concerned about, because it's such a significant property, the last of its kind, it is a demonstration site, that it have the appropriate standing seam metal roof. And so having all the experience with the Architectural Conservancy, myself with restoration, and also speaking with the people who own the, shall we say, the business partners' house, the Whistler House in Waterloo, which is half the elaborate design of this Shoemaker house. And they have done extensive restoration and understanding of sources that a standing seam metal roof is the more appropriate for this particular building. I had to bring it forward. In 1984, I was.
That's fine. That's fine, Jean. Jean, that's fine. I just have issue that, we as a council, when we vote on something and it passes or it doesn't pass, we don't go out and try and change it. Anyway, this is a building that is not in a high profile area. The people, the buyers of the home explained that it's not in a place that people drive by a lot. And it's a huge financial burden for them to restore to these measures. So how do you address that to them?
This is a heritage designated property. I too own 2 heritage buildings designated, one designated individually, part 4, one is in the heritage district. And I realize what the cost is. And I do feel if restored, there are grants available. The Waterloo Regional Heritage Foundation has up to 50% grants available. I feel that I have difficulty with the, I do have difficulty with the quotes that are given. And I would like you to let the other 2 delegations talk about these quotes and so on. I realize this. It is it is time consuming. It can be financially consuming. You have to know your budget. And that's my answer.
Okay, thank you.
The difficulty.
It's a major difficulty. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Folks, let's stay focused with our questions. I got 5 other people with questions. There are two other delegations at least, and I will also note that staff is here on the call to answer questions afterwards as well. So next in the queue is Councillor Michaud.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have comments, but I could make those later. If I could just actually just say at the appropriate time, I would like to move the suggestions that Mrs. Halblum has made for this.
Okay, I'll come to you for that. The process will be that we will deal with the recommendation coming out of Heritage will get moved first. And then you can move that as an amendment. Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, thanks. Jean, thank you so much for coming in and for the work that you do to preserve heritage around the region and in particular in the city. It's commendable, actually. So basically, if I understand what you're proposing, you're saying we'll go with the dormers as proposed. Is that correct?
Yes.
Even though
I
it's
do
not
believe
identical to what was in the original home.
Right. I do believe I heard, but wasn't confirmed at the meeting, that the owners are willing to do the horizontal cladding on the dormers, which is important. And I do believe that the headers or the half moon or that particular area can be worked around. I do believe that's possible. And there will have to be wood siding or some type of support on either side of the windows. I do believe that that is the intent of the owners.
Okay.
But I needed to have that clarified so that we know, is this what we're getting? Is this what staff has to deal with?
Right. And second, you're okay going with a metal roof rather than a wood roof or wood shingle roof, or I forget what it currently is, but in a color that's compatible with the current roof, correct?
Correct.
And then the porch restoration, which is a real important feature of the house. I mean, and currently not there, correct? And the idea there is to restore it.
The porch, which I'm talking about, is the one that is shown in the heritage package, not the one that perhaps was at the front of the house. I'm not asking for that. I'm
Okay.
asking for that back porch because of the chamfered porch posts that are there.
Okay, so your biggest concern are the windows, and you'd like to see that deferred until further research is done on them, given the value of having those windows remain, correct?
True.
Yeah.
And if I could, I do believe that there could be discussion with those who have had restoration, who've done wood restoration, and the quotes are quite high, and I'd really like to see that checked out again.
Okay, I want to ask you the same question that I asked the current owners of the house. What do you think the impact of the heritage value of the house would be if the windows were changed to vinyl?
Shall we say, would you put, I don't know, on a Tesla, the Tesla car, whatever it might be, would you put some big symbol on the back of the car? You know, it all is part and parcel of the house, of the heritage designation. It's very clear. It's called character defining element in the Historic Places of Canada, in the Heritage Act, and in the Heritage Designation Statement. It reduces the value.
Okay. Have you ever been in this house? Just a personal question.
Yes, I have. In 1984, I really need to share this. The interior features. I would like you to experience a walk-in cooking fireplace. And it's deep enough, shall I say, and wide enough that I could invite the 3 committee councillors and the ward councillor and us, and we could all stand socially distanced for COVID.
Okay, thank you.
I like the ballroom
Thank you.
too. It has a
Okay,
plaster.
Councillor, sorry, Ms. Halboom, we've got we've got to move on. Councillor Ioannidis.
Thank you, Mayor Urbanovic. And thanks, Ms. Halboom, for coming in. I just want a little bit more clarification on the metal roof, why that's okay, and to change that. To me, that seems like a huge change in character compared to the windows.
What we're looking for is a repair. What is on there right now is a metal roof. So we're saying, all right, repair with a metal roof. And then when the time comes, you could choose for the wood shingled roof or slate roof, which was appropriate in the 1840s.
Okay. As part of the document that you had drafted, do you have a budget on what all those items would cost?
I'm sorry, I cannot tell you. The dormers, I understand, they're proposed anyway by the applicant. So he must have a budget for that. I'm just asking to get the right size and the detail. The metal roof, we're not asking anything different. The windows, I will tell you that in 2012, I had in a building which looks similar to this building, but not as elaborate, that it had the wooden windows, the 6/6 and the 3/3 thrown out, and vinyl and aluminum were put in. And honestly, Councillor Unitas, all I could see for 10 years that I had the building, I had to look at mold and cracking and wood sills dirty all the time and condensation. And so my thing was, when I could restore those wood windows, and of course I couldn't, I had no choice, they were gone. So I did find wood replaced with wood. I can say that 9 large were at $950 each. And then there were 6 3/3 with certain dimensions, $760 each, and 3/3, another 5, $700 each. And that's half. So I did half one year and then half another. And also the contractor, that included removing the vinyl, the ugly windows, the aluminum, and the sills. That's another thing. You have to really watch what kind of sills you put back in. And so it is nowhere near the cost that this has been quoted. And the other 2 delegations that I know are coming can explain this easier than me, and they have more experience than I do.
Okay. And the example that you were just referring to with those prices, when was that done?
2012.
2012.
8 years ago. And I do not have, they are hand painted, not hand painted, but they're repainted. And they look excellent, no paint's chipped off, and they're fine.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Gazzola.
Yes, I just want to clarify one thing, and then I would also like to ask Ms. Halboom a question. But just to clarify for Councillor Snyder, this topic was discussed at our last.
Councillor Gazzola, we can focus on questions of the delegation now, and if there's other items you want to debate about later, we can deal with that during the debate time.
I don't want to debate. I just want to clarify why this is here. Okay.
Okay.
Right. Councillor Schneider asked a question. What happened? It was discussed at Heritage. The committee voted in favor of the recommendation that's before you, but it wasn't unanimous. And when it's not unanimous, it comes to council for ratification, and that's why it's here. Okay.
Okay.
I have a question of. Pardon? No, I have a question
with your question.
Yeah, Jean, were you on council when this house was designated?
No, I was a volunteer from the community in 1984. I did the research on the house, and you will recall a former councillor, Grace Stoner, who was out in the Bridgeport area, knew this house well, and worked with the owner to get it designated.
Okay. The other question, and you would probably know because of your background of knowledge, when it was designated by the city, were the windows specifically designated separately?
Yes, they were. It's in the reasons for designation.
Okay, now my next question is, what happens if council doesn't change or leave the windows as you would like? Is there a penalty for that, or what? Who can challenge that, or what is the situation since it's been designated specifically?
I cannot answer that. However, I suppose it could be taken to a higher court and challenged.
Okay, that's fine.
Or you could rescind.
Councillor Gazzola, your question.
Pardon?
Councillor Gazzola, that's a question for staff.
All right, I'll withdraw and ask staff. I'm fine. That's it. I'm done.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you, Ms. Hallboom. Appreciate you coming in today. Our next delegation is Gail Poole. Welcome, Ms. Poole. If you can unmute your mic.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, Mr. Poole?
Yes. I have a slide set. Okay, good evening, Mr. Mayor and Councillor. My name is Gail Poole. I'm here with my wife, Frances Stewart. I'm a resident of Victoria Park Heritage Conservation District. I'm also a member of the Architectural Conservancy, and I've been a member for about 15 years, almost since I started restoring our house. I'm here to speak about the question of using vinyl windows at 38 Shirk Place. I recommend restoration rather than replacement, since the cost is much lower than either custom wood or vinyl. You probably heard some details. I know that vinyl is less energy efficient and has a shorter lifetime. And it may be that the initial cost of complete replacement would be high for custom wood windows. But the difference is the poor lifetime of vinyl compared to wood shows that wood is better. Our windows at 110 Water Street are 110 years old. Vinyl is estimated to last about 20 to 30 years. The windows at 38 Shirk Place are 180 years old. I had the opportunity to go by the house today, and some of the windows are absolutely restorable. Parts may have to be replaced. I know that most people choose vinyl because the contractors are accustomed to installing those in new homes. Suppliers argue that they are more energy efficient, but they perform badly in scientific tests of heat loss. We are in an energy crisis. The data on energy efficiency is clear. Wood windows are much better than either steel or vinyl. In addition, traditional storms are more efficient than double or triple pane windows because the R value is based on the dead airspace. Traditional storms have a 3-inch dead airspace compared to the 1/2 inch in a typical double pane window. In the following slides, I'll describe our restoration techniques and also the way to alter existing storm windows to fit both windows and screens that can be removed from the inside of a house. Slide, please. As you can see from the images here, our windows are extensive. We have actually 71 windows in our home. Some second floor storm windows were metal, and so wooden windows were reinstalled. We actually found most all of the wooden windows that had been on the house. Existing wood storm windows were restored using wood epoxy. Heritage grants require that replacement windows be exactly as shown in original photographs, as you can see in this 1910 image of the house. Slide, please, on the right. Window restorations are beautiful, as you can see in this particular example. Now, this comes from Ireland. Slide, please. The restoration process is fairly simple. Tools are basic to any woodworking shop. Wood epoxy for minor areas is easy. Use of boiled linseed oil helps preservation. Use of oil-based and alkyd paints require less frequent maintenance. The image on the right shows windows being restored, and this is at the Edifice Atelier Institute. Slide. Window restoration process. You can see in the image on the left that there was considerable damage to many of the windows. This window on the left shows a metal frame, which was replaced with wood. The one on the right is a basement window, which where the sill was almost completely eroded away from the window. This required the replacement by a Western red cedar plank, which was soaked in linseed oil for a few days before being installed and then painted. Slide. You can see the replacement, how it looks compared to the old one. Slide, please. And on the right, you can see how nice this window has been restored. Slide, please. Storm window modification was undertaken in the house. On the upper story, a lot of people don't want to have storms because they have to get up and remove them in the summer. Okay, so we modified these, and some of them had already been modified. And so we replaced all of the storm windows on the second floor with inserts that allow glass and screen. The appearance is not significantly changed in this case. Slide. I recommend restoration rather than replacement where possible with wood epoxy. Overall cost of wood windows is lower than vinyl in the long run because vinyl windows require frequent replacement. Wood is more energy efficient than vinyl. Wood is the only appropriate material for a heritage building. Slide. And here are some sources. Slide. Other concerns. In our restorations, we were subject to Heritage District rules. Actual photographs or existing materials were necessary before we undertook any restoration. It was not acceptable to draw on other examples to restore heritage attributes. Restoration of our kitchen veranda was funded, but the cost of the eaves trough was excluded because it was absent in the original photograph. When brickwork was required, we had to lay out all the bricks on the site, on the driveway to be inspected. In short, numerous restrictions are imposed on heritage restorations. Slide. The letter to applicants for heritage grants had the following paragraphs, and I just want to point to the bolded parts. Preferred alterations to heritage properties are those that repair rather than replace original heritage attributes. And no owner of designated property shall alter the property or permit the alteration of the property if the alteration is likely to affect the property's heritage attributes. Slide. Why have vinyl windows been approved for 38 Shirk Place? Our Heritage District rules would not qualify for as a grant had we asked for vinyl windows. And since a Part 5 Heritage Conservation District has such requirements, changes to a Part 4 property should be even more stringent. We would not have received the Mike and Pat Wagner Award for Heritage Restoration had we replaced our windows with vinyl. Slide. Conclusion, win with wood. Using wood is a win-win-win situation. Wood maintains the heritage property and value, so it is a win for our local heritage. Wood is more energy efficient, so the occupants and future occupants win. Using wood is good for the environment since it uses renewable materials, reduces landfill waste, and can be done locally. So everybody wins with wood. Thank you. Be willing to answer any questions.
Thanks. We have one question for you, Councillor Schneider.
Thank you, Gail. With the restoration of the windows, what would you estimate the cost of replacing or restoring those windows to be?
Restoring them, it's very difficult to estimate that because it comes in a buying materials, for example, because much of the work was done by myself and my wife. We bought a wood epoxy kit, which costs around $400 US, I think. We bought several gallons of linseed oil and many gallons of paint. I had a carpenter do the screen and window inserts. That would have been maybe $1,000 or so. Screening material, we used old glass. Much of the glass that was available, we've found cast out on the sides of streets, searching neighborhoods which have older homes.
Okay.
People put in new windows.
That's good. That's good. I just want to point out in this home, they've got 45 windows.
We have 71
restored, and they got estimates on that from Walter Furling Conservation. Their window restoration summary cost was $198,000 for those 45 windows.
That was for new windows, I believe.
Nope.
When I read the report, that was not.
That was for restoration?
That was for new windows.
Restoration.
Okay, folks, let's not
conversation I had with Walter regarding the restoration of my wooden windows. Those are the restoration costs.
It may be too high to you. I think that's very high. I believe.
Well, this is a professional, though.
Okay, Councillor Schneider, do you have any further questions for Mr. Poole?
I believe that's new windows.
Well, I do challenge his stats on vinyl windows, but I'll leave that go.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Chapman.
Thanks for Dr. Poole. Thank you for coming in. I have great respect for the work that you've done in your house and for your knowledge of heritage buildings. You mentioned grant money. Are those grants still available? Like your restoration has happened over a number of years, right? Do you know if that grant money is still available and how would one tap into it?
Yes, yeah, the grants are still available. You have to apply. As I said, the original materials and photographs showing what the house did look like have to be provided. We're fortunate to have photographs. The grants were done in stages. So we did one set on the second floor in 1 year and so on. So that, but the limit of the grant is a maximum of $3,000, 50% of the cost, maximum of $3,000 per application.
Okay. And I want to ask you the same question that I asked the other two, and that is, what do you think would be the impact of the heritage value of the house if the windows were changed from wood to vinyl?
I think the impact would be significant. If I could just read something from it's from a document produced by the province on heritage designation. It says, if a property is important for its architectural design or original details, and that design is irreparably changed, it loses its value and its integrity. Imagine the difference between a Georgian house built at the beginning of the 19th century that has its original floors, windows, and details, compared with a house of a similar vintage that has been covered with aluminum siding and has been, quote, updated with vinyl windows and modern finishes. That's from a heritage document on, it's called Designating Heritage Properties by the province.
Do you know of any other houses in the region of this vintage and this style?
No, I don't.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, those appear to be all the questions for you. Thank you, Mr. Poole. Our next delegation is Shannon. Sure. Our next is Shannon Kyles.
Genius. Recruited it.
So Shannon is on the call at the moment.
Sorry, is not on the call?
Is not, no.
Okay, we'll move on then to our next delegation, Peter Sakura.
Hello, can you hear me? Great.
Yes, we can. Thank you, Mr. Sakura.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, members of council, my name is Peter Chichura, and I have been a registered architect for 25 years. And I'm the principal of Peter Chichura Architect in Kitchener, and my practice specialty is the renovation of residential properties. So I've also been on this is my fourth term as a member of the Heritage Committee. And if you haven't heard enough about it already, I'd like to speak about vinyl windows because I've had a lot of experience with them. Vinyl windows first started being used in Canada in the 1960s and have been being used sort of continuously since. But the first vinyl windows that came along had a really distinct advantage over other windows, and that is that they were cheap. They were just the cheapest thing that you could use. And that was the prime advantage for probably the first 20 years. And as such, they got a deservedly bad reputation, both for their visual appeal and their functionality. Generally, compared to the world of windows, vinyl windows at that time were not that good. So when those windows were used in the restoration of heritage properties, there were obvious problems because the profiles didn't match, the material nature didn't match, and to say that at that time that a vinyl window was inappropriate for a heritage restoration would have been absolutely correct. So let's go 30 years into the future to the present day, and the technology and the manufacturing of vinyl windows has changed substantially. It's hard to compare what vinyl windows are now to what vinyl windows are then. It's not to say that there aren't cheap or bad vinyl windows today, but it's certainly true to say that there are very good vinyl windows today, and there are top of the line vinyl windows today. And they are beautifully engineered, they are energy efficient, and they have an aesthetic which has been worked on, which makes them much more appropriate for working with on heritage buildings. The owners of this property submitted pictures of the windows that they're proposing to use on this property. And for me, I would be concerned about two things primarily for the use of a vinyl window here. One is the profile of the window frame, whether that's appropriate. And the other is the muntin bars. So those are the vertical and horizontal divisions of the glass, which in historic windows would be separate panes, right? But in modern windows, they give the illusion of having separate panes. So in the samples that were submitted, the profiles, the surrounding profiles look completely appropriate to matching a wood profile. And the muntins that are proposed in a lot of vinyl windows, the cheaper vinyl windows, the muntins are a vinyl tape which goes on the inside of, it's sandwiched on the inside of the glass. So it gives it a very sort of flat, looks like a piece of tape on the window. The ones that are presented here, the muntins are actually 3 dimensions, so that they cast a shadow line. So while it's not a perfect muntin to the original, it's pretty good. It's actually very good. And given where this building is in relation to the street and its visibility from the public field, it would take a very fine and expert eye to be able to tell the difference between a wood window and a vinyl window that's being proposed here. So, you know, it passes the visual test for me. It is a more efficient window. And to say that a vinyl window, just by its nature of being vinyl, is an inferior window is no longer true. So the second thing I'd like to just briefly touch on is the scope of work that's involved in the restoration of this project. This is a big job, and I really gotta admire somebody who is willing to take on a restoration of this size. And we need more brave and resourced people in order to do this. So this is going to take a lot of work, and this is going to take a lot of money to bring this building back. And in the case of the windows, I don't think by insisting on a wood window that the value is reciprocal for what we as the public would get out of it. And I think that money could be better spent elsewhere within this restoration. And, you know, God knows they will be able to spend that money elsewhere, or they will have to spend that money elsewhere. So I just like to urge council to accept the recommendations of staff and to accept the recommendations of the Heritage Committee, and to pass this heritage permit application. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chakura. Councillor Singh.
Yes, Peter, I do appreciate you coming before council, because it helps to hear a counter position to some of the delegations as they have presented. And again, let me know if I caught this right. You said you're a licensed architect over the last 25 years, and you specialize in restoration of older buildings?
Yes, I've been licensed for 25 years, and my practice in residential renovation has been going since 2005.
Okay, all right. So I guess for this type of subject matter, you're an expert as they come. So the fact that you serve on the committee as well, I'm assuming that staff went through a full analysis of the application and trying to realize the cost benefit analysis and ensuring the heritage components are conserved, while at the same time, being reasonable on the cost aspect of the property owner. And I'm guessing this is the same rationale that was looked by the committee?
I can't speak for staff.
Well, is that the rationale that the committee came from with?
I'm not sure I understand.
No, just balancing the conservation of the heritage features, and while at the same time recognizing the burden of cost to the property owner.
That is always the challenge of restoration. Yes.
And do you think that's a meaningful consideration?
Yes, it always must be done. I mean, any building construction process is a journey of decision and compromise. And when you're taking on a heritage property of this scale and this much unknown, the challenge is even bigger.
A journey of decision and compromise. That's a good way of putting it, because so far what's being proposed by the other delegations and some members of council are agreeing in this consideration that cost should not really matter. At the end of the day, it's full conservation of the heritage attributes, irrespective of the real world aspects of how do you get it done. Maybe that's a rhetorical question, so I won't even pose you to answer on that one. The other question I had was, because you serve on the committee as well, others have referenced that there are grants available through the city. So it's not that, the Heritage Committee and then council are putting a onerous weight on the property owner because grants are available at the end of the day. So utmost effort needs to be made, irrespective of the cost, to ensure that, you try to conserve to the old heritage attributes as much as possible. Are you familiar with those grants? And can you, if you are, do you want to make an opinion if related to this type of work, do those grants even come close to, balancing some of the cost?
I am not knowledgeable enough about the grant program to comment on it.
Okay, I think that's a good question to ask of staff at a later point, which I will. And once more, thank you for providing your balanced opinion.
Thank you, Councillor Singh. Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, hi, Peter. Thanks for coming in. I just wondered what you thought of the, were you listening when the other speakers were presenting? Could you hear what they were saying? Yeah, okay. So I just wanted to know what your take of was on the sections of the Heritage Act that they referenced. So
I believe that the windows are proposed. It says it is either the same or a matching material, right? So I believe in this case that the window that is presented is a matching material to the original windows.
Even if the windows themselves are designated when the house was designated, like they were specifically mentioned as being designated?
Yes, it does not say it must be replaced with the exact same material, right?
Okay.
In all situations, it's a similar material.
And are you familiar with any other houses of this vintage and style in the region?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Chikora. Those are all the questions we have.
Thank you.
And our last delegation is Srdjan Vulina.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we do have Shannon on the call now.
Okay, well, I'll come back to Shannon. Is Srdjan Vulina there?
He is. He's registered for a separate item.
Oh, okay. Sorry, apologies. Shannon Kyles then.
Okay. Here we go. First of all, I'd like to apologize for being late. I didn't get the Zoom call and I was going through the Kitchener site, etc., trying to find it. And I'm just getting on now. What I would like to say is that I have been studying windows and replacement windows for a good 20 years now. And with respect to the previous speaker, Peter, I have never seen a vinyl window that even comes close to the quality that is required for a restoration of a building. If the windows were designated, then replacing them with vinyl, it would not be the same by any stretch of the imagination. The Muntons, As far as I know, it is outside the range of possibilities that a vinyl window could have the same visual appeal as an original wooden window. I sent in 3 slides. 10 years ago, I took apart an 1830s Regency cottage and moved it to Prince Edward County and rebuilt it from scratch. And here it is. Thank you very much. This is the Regency cottage in question. I have 8 of the very tall windows. The installer, while putting them in, was standing actually in the window sill. He was tall enough he was, I think, 5'10", and that's almost as high as the windows go. And I got the storm windows from Webwood Windows, and the storm windows are 40 inches by 36 inches, and they were $100 each. So it was like $1,600 for the 8 windows for the storms. And then restoring the windows was a much more expensive, but not outside the range of possibilities. I have to say, with regard to windows, that one of the problems that we do have is that we don't have enough skilled tradespeople, and often the quotes are quite large with regard to comparing it with replacement windows. But there are many, many studies, and I'd be happy to send some information on this, showing that, yes, the windows, when you restore them, it's a little bit more expensive when you restore them, but they're good for another 200 years. Whereas vinyl windows usually have a life of 25 years or more. So with keeping in mind the integrity of the building that you're talking about and the quality of it, I think I'm just going to have to say that my vote would be for going with, always for going with the wooden windows and restoring them. I just, in my opinion, and I've run the Ontario Architecture website for 22 years now, and I've been teaching history of architecture for 40 years. And I've written 25 or 30 articles with regard to that. In my opinion, vinyl windows would not be appropriate for the building in question. I think there's a photograph of the inside of these windows. Thank you. Okay, so you have not only the window bucks here, and then you have the casing, but all of this, all of the styles, etc., are in vinyl. They're just not, they're not the same quality at all. Also, with regard to this house, I had it built, it was built in 2010, 2011. All of my wooden windows are absolutely fine. I had the exterior painted again this summer, and it cost me $600 for the 8 windows. In that time, I have something like 14 vinyl windows that I had to put in because I put the second story on, which wasn't there before. And 6 of those windows have had to be replaced this year. Certainly they were not absolute top of the line, and the Muntins look revolting because they're vinyl windows, but 10 out of those windows have had to be replaced. And this is pretty standard. Most vinyl windows last from between 10 to 25 years. And with respect to the fact that I was late, I think I'll probably, unless we could have the next slide. Okay, there.
I can ask you to try to wrap up as well.
Yes, I apologize again that I'm late. But in my opinion, you're not going to get, look at the shadow quality here. You're not going to get those thin Muntins in a vinyl window, and you're not going to get the same quality. The appeal for that building will be very much diminished if you put vinyl windows on. And I guess I'm just going to end on that.
Great, thank you very much, Ms. Kyles. Councillor Schneider, you have a question.
I do. You mentioned Webwood windows.
Yes.
So how did you find their pricing? How many windows did you have to get, and how did you find their pricing?
Well, there were 16 sashes, so 2 sashes to each double hung window. And I was getting quotes of up to $1,000 per sash, which would have been $16,000. It's astonishing what people are charging. And then Webwood windows in Newton, Ontario, was $100, and they're absolutely perfect. Absolutely perfect. And I've done 2 other buildings since then using Webwood, and they're astonishingly good.
Okay, because I just wonder, because when you mentioned Webwood windows, the owners of this home actually got quotes from them, and basically when it turns out for all the windows that they would need, 45 windows, they're looking at $162,000.
Is that to rebuild all of the windows, or is that for storms?
That's for their new windows. So
yes, their windows are very good quality.
Yeah.
And they would certainly be worth that. But if you restore the original windows and just have the have Webwood make the storm windows, it would be considerably cheaper.
Okay, thank you.
Those appear to be all the questions that we have. Thank you, Ms. Kyles, for coming in.
Okay, and again, I'm sorry I was technically challenged.
No problem. These things happen. Okay, Council, questions of staff now. Councillor Davey.
Thank you. My first question, I'd just like to get staff's comment on it. Can you even see this house from the street?
Through the mayor, if I could ask the clerk to bring in Ms. Groen and Ms. Bustamante into the call.
Thanks, Councillor Davey. Through the mayor, when you are traveling on Shirk Street looking at this property, it is not entirely visible from the public right of way, just given the level of vegetation that's in place to screen the property, and the property is set up a little bit higher than the road as well.
Yeah, I've been there a few times, but you actually have to drive up on private property really to get a good close look at the property itself and the windows, et cetera, correct?
Yes, that would be correct.
Okay, thank you. Supposing that for whatever reason, whether something happens here or otherwise, changes the proposal that the applicant wants, it's within the applicant's right to simply not do anything and not touch the windows, leave them as they are, let them deteriorate in perpetuity. Is that correct? Is there any rules preventing that from happening?
That is correct. The property owners would be subject to the city's property standards bylaw with respect to upkeep on the property, but there would not be obligation for the property owner to restore features on the property.
Right. And I'm not sure if this is a question necessarily for you, but my understanding is the property is just under, it's about 3/4 of an acre, which means that there's no regulation with respect to trees if it were to be redeveloped, and it's zoned R6, which would permit townhouses if that building did not exist there. Or is that a question I can ask you, or a question for other staff?
That may be a question for other staff.
Okay, is there anyone on the...
Ms. Bustamante, do you want to respond?
Chair, I do not have that information at this moment, but I can certainly look for that and get it back to members of council in short order.
No, that's fine, and I'll make the reason I asked that question clear in my comments. Those are the only questions I had, Mr. Mayor, but I will have some comments on this item. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Davey. Councillor Marsh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And so my question is, with regard to the property standards that that we have for heritage properties that have been designated like this one, why has this particular building already been allowed to enter into this state of such disrepair that it is now? Is it because nobody has complained about it? Is it complaint based for a heritage home as well as for a regular home?
Through the mayor, yes, it would be a complaint-based process with respect to property standards orders. And unfortunately, we as heritage planning staff don't have the capacity to go out and monitor all of these properties on a proactive basis like we would like to be able to do.
Right, you'd need a whole team. Okay, and so that might be worth, you know, when we look at properties like this one that are really so special, and it's only one of a kind in our region because the rest have not made it this far. You know, it sounds like there are many heritage advocates who really want us to be able to maintain the amount of heritage that we have, and I do too. And I think all of our council wants us to have heritage, but I'm wondering, why is it the burden of this new property owner to now have to do all the restoration from 1973, close to 50 years of disrepair?
Through the mayor, I can't specifically answer that question.
That's fine. It's more of a rhetorical question. My final question is, are the owners eligible for a heritage grant if they were to use vinyl?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the Heritage Grant Program funds authentic restoration of properties. So funding for the windows would only be available to the property owners if they were to apply. If they were to replace the windows with the same material, design and profile to what's existing. So vinyl windows would not be eligible for the Heritage Grant Program.
Thank you. And sorry, my actual last question is, would the vinyl, or sorry, would the property owners be eligible for grants to restore other aspects of the property if they were to be restored same for same in terms of materials?
Given that this is a Part 4 designated property, this property is eligible for application through the grant program, but each project that would be applied for under that program would have to be reviewed on a case-by-case basis. So it would really be determined as to what would be proposed as part of a grant application.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Marsh. Councillor Singh.
Yeah, thank you. I think Councillor Marsh touched on part of my question regarding the grants that are available. So Victoria, can you outline what is the total funding that's available for the grant, the Heritage Grant?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, there is approximately $30,000 that's set aside each year for the designated Heritage Property Grant Program. And that $30,000 is intended to fund multiple properties and projects throughout the city. However, each individual property owner is only eligible to receive or half the cost of their eligible project up to a maximum of $3,000.
$3,000?
That's correct.
Okay, all right. So when the Heritage Grant is touted as a reasonable placeholder to compensate or balance the cost of a property owner, where they're required to maintain and retain heritage components of a designated property. So such as this, where the cost is $130,000 higher than the vinyl windows, or even a total $160,000 or so. So all they could apply for is $30,000.
Sorry, they could apply for a grant for the total cost of the project, but they would only be eligible to receive up to $3,000.
Maximum of $30,000.
No, maximum of $3,000.
Oh, so a maximum of $3,000. $30,000 is a total funded component of the grant, right?
That's the total funds that are available through the program in its entirety.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. I think that speaks for itself of how much of a relief that grant really applies in these type of restorations. So I'm not even sure why it's even there to mention. Thank you.
Councillor Michaud.
Thank you. Most of my questions have been answered, but I have one question for Ms. Groen. When someone purchases a heritage home, are there any other grants other than city grants they can get? And do they have access to it? And who lets them know about this? Like who has all that information?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, in addition to the city's designated Heritage Property Grant Program, there is a program that is available through the Region of Waterloo Heritage Foundation. I don't have all of the particulars about this program, as it's not operated at the city level, it's operated at the regional level. But information about grants, both city and the regional grants, are provided to potential purchasers of heritage properties or owners of heritage properties.
Okay, thank you. I have comments at the right time, Mr. Mayor. I'll leave it for that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Davey.
Sorry, I'm just comment, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, sorry. I'll come back to you. Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, Victoria, I was just wondering, are there ever opportunities to, I don't know if the word negotiate is correct or not, but if the owners of this house were willing to restore the windows at the front of the house and put vinyl on the other sides, does that ever come up? So you preserve the front of the facade and then, you know, allow for the vinyl on the other areas.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I suppose that is something that could be contemplated, but from my experiences here, I have not come across a application where works of that nature were proposed. That's not to say it couldn't be done, but in my experience, that hasn't been done.
Okay, I'm just thinking about the overall cost, and if something like that would make sense. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Gazzola.
Yeah, most of the questions have been answered. I just want to go back over the question dealing with the fact that this property was designated by the city, and in the designation process, they specifically designated the windows. Just what does that mean? And what happens if there's a failure going forth to keep the windows of the same property? Through
you, Mr. Mayor, the windows on the property have been explicitly identified within the designating bylaw as being an attribute that contributes to the overall cultural heritage value or interest of this particular property. However, I would like to mention that the designating bylaw does not reference the material of the window. It only references the style of the windows as being the attribute of the property.
Okay, fine. Thank you. Thank you.
Councillor Johnson, are you a question or comment?
I have a comment. Thank you.
Okay, and Councillor Singh, you're in the queue for comments. Okay, so those appear to be all of the questions. So, Councillor Gazzola, are you bringing forward the recommendation from Heritage Kitchener?
Yeah, yes, I have it here. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're bringing it forward, and who's seconding it?
I'm Councillor Chapman.
Councillor Chapman seconding it.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Michaud, you indicated that you wanted to bring forward and the amendment from the delegation from Ms.
Yes.
Halden?
Yes, but I have
Okay.
comments as well. So can we make comments first, or are we doing that?
No, I'll come to you. I'll come back to you for comments. Is there a seconder for that recommendation? And it was quite lengthy.
Councillor Chapman is seconder, yes.
Is seconding the amendment.
She's.
Councillor Gazzola, you're moving the recommendation from the report.
And I was asking.
And Councillor Chapman is seconding it. Councillor Michaud has moved an amendment, and Councillor Chapman has also indicated that she's seconding the amendment.
Can I do that? I can do both, right?
Yes.
Yes, you can.
Yes.
Okay, Councillor Gazzola.
Yes.
If you want to queue in, then please queue in, and I'll come to you. Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. I will deal with the amendment first, but people can speak to both at the same time. Councillor Michaud, do you want to go first since you moved the amendment?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
I want to thank everyone for coming out tonight, the property owners, the delegates for and against the motion, Jean Halbloom for her experience and expertise in heritage in this region. This is very frustrating. I've sat on the Heritage Committee for a couple of years now, and I admire all the hard work that the city does. I admire all the people that are on this committee, but the heritage of things just seems to get lost, and I think it's a little slightly broken, because we dedicate heritage homes, and then they sit. And they just fall apart, and then someone buys them, and here we are now trying to restore something that for whatever reason the previous owner owned it since 1970 and just let it go. And I think going forward, I hope that at some point, city staff and maybe council can look at see a way to fix this system, because the way it's working, in my mind, it doesn't work. But again, I do want to thank everyone for coming out, and I do commend the property owners for taking on this, because you can see this house from the road. I drove by there on Sunday, and there aren't any trees, and I was quite surprised when I did drive by. The house beside it, I don't know the heritage significance of it, but I played in that house as a young girl with my best friend, and there was a dummy waiter in that house from the top of the floor to the bottom, and it just brought back a lot of memories just seeing those two houses sitting on the hill. So there is some heritage significance there, and if this motion or doesn't pass, that Jean, the recommendations that Ms. Halbloom is putting forth, I appreciate that she did it, but I also appreciate whatever the new homeowners can do to maintain that, so that house still stands on that hill. So with that, I will put forward make the motion of the comments that Jean Halbloom suggested. And do you want to put that up on the screen, or do you want me to read it again?
Thank you. The clerk can put it up on the screen. In the meantime, I'll go to Councillor Davey.
Thank you. I want to just start by saying this is very strange as someone, I don't know, someone tuning in and watching this, hearing us discuss the relative aesthetics of windows that you can't even see without literally trespassing, I think is probably a puzzling thing for the viewing public. I asked some questions about what the teeth are in terms of heritage properties. And like Councillor Michaud said, the system is broken. And if you are someone that cares deeply about heritage, your advocacy is much better in going after the system, trying to improve the system, than what I'm seeing happening here. The reason I asked the questions that I did is because this property, if we make it more difficult for these people, well, I'm going to tell you what the developers that we all have come to know over the years as members of council would do. They would let this property sit until it would deteriorate to a point that it was not savable, and it would be torn down. And the developer would make a mint, because it's a 3/4 of an acre property. The first thing they do is they'd cut down all of the oak trees that are on that property, which would be terrible because we can't regulate it. And then they'd build something like at least 10 from my quick look at it, townhomes. That's not even counting stacked, and that's within the existing current zoning. Okay, this is what we're up against. So with that as the backdrop, when we go after people like Brody and Emily here, what we're doing is we're sending a message to the community, the ones that are actually interested in helping us preserve with their own private dollars, that we're going to make it as difficult for you as we possibly can. We're going to make it as difficult for you as we possibly can. I hope that people understand that that's what they're doing here. Like, what do you think if this goes through and people go to Brody and Emily after this and they say, okay, so what's your experience to the heritage property? They're going to tell everyone it's a friggin' nightmare. Okay, we have to be realistic. We have to be realistic in how we approach these things. We have people that are coming in, they're going to put a metal roof on this. They're going to guarantee that heritage building stays there for 50 years with that roof alone. Okay, we should be supporting them and we should be thanking them. We should not be making the process more difficult for them.
Okay, sorry, that's it. Thanks, Councillor Davey. I thought there was a bit of a roll still going on there. Councillor Singh, you're next.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'll probably be at the risk of repeating something same as what Councillor Davey has already said. So I'll try to summarize and be very short. You know what? This needs to be a partnership, I think, with the homeowner. And as Peter outlined it, it absolutely needs to be an exercise of cost and reason. We have to be fair. And, you know, putting a complete financial burden on the property owners alone and then cry the fact that the heritage system is broken, that's not fair. I think we need to approach this in a way that how can we work with the property owners to maintain, you know, the important heritage attributes of designated properties, while at the same time providing a appropriate relief on some of the associated costs. We can't put the entirety of that burden on just the property owner alone. And saying that there's a grant that exists, as this being an example of just replacing the windows where they would cost upwards to $160,000, where that would be almost 25% of the cost of the purchase of the home, and then say that grants exist where they could only be eligible for a $3,000 relief. That's not a grant. That's adding insult to injury, in my opinion. You know, as the heritage staff have outlined, the act or the bylaw doesn't necessarily outline the type of materials that need to be used. And I think even through the vinyl windows, I think the homeowner will take effort to ensure that it still fits to the overall heritage look. They're wanting to, as Councillor Davey has already said, they're wanting to put extensive additional renovations to preserve this heritage property. It's gone into derelict over the last 40 years by a property owner who cared about the heritage components and actually worked with city staff or the previous councillor, as the previous delegate had given us some information, to bring this property to a heritage designation. So they cared about the heritage. But again, the reality of cost also played a factor. And that's probably the reason why they weren't able to have the necessary upkeep and preserve the building. We don't want the same level of interest to carry on, where the property will just continue to disintegrate and at a point, come to a point where it would need to be demolished. Where would we there then? Where would the heritage preservation be then? I think we have to work in partnership with the property owner. And here we have a property owner who's wanting to preserve this property, put the necessary renovations where it will last probably 50 years plus. As they've said, they want it to last 200 years. And I think we have to put some emphasis and consideration to those words. I think it would be unfair to do anything other than support the staff recommendation and the Heritage Committee recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Singh. Councillor Schneider.
Thank you, Mayor Brevanovic. And I do want to thank all the delegations that came in to speak. I feel we should probably reach out and really thank Emily and Brody for taking this project on. They're taking a heritage home that's not in great shape. They're going to restore it. They're going to keep the integrity of it. They're going to keep the look the same. The materials might not match, but the look will be the same. And they're also going to be providing some additional housing. There's going to be 4 housing units in this building. We need housing options. We should thank them for this low-level intensification that they're bringing to this building. I agree with what's being said. We shouldn't be making it difficult for them. We should be doing everything we can to help make this happen. They've taken this building that needed some love. They're going to give it some love. They're going to give people some housing options, and they're making a difference by saving this project. So I will fully support the staff recommendation and the Heritage Committee recommendation. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Schneider. Councillor Marsh.
Thank you very much. I want to echo the thanks to all the delegates, and I want to wish Brody Barth and Emily Sherman's all the best of luck in restoring that property to its former glory. It is beautiful. It is huge, and some of those images also look daunting. And so I really think that you are brave and admirable. But I also want to just say that I agree with some of my colleagues that this heritage issue is really something we need to work on. And I noticed on the Heritage Committee agenda that we didn't, I didn't see the full minutes. We do need to keep best practices in mind, and we do, I think, do a disservice to all the heritage properties that we've designated if we don't back it up with some better supports and better ways of making sure that our heritage is preserved over the long haul. Not all property owners are as passionate and really responsible as Mr. Poole and his wife, for example. And we have many others who are just stellar in the amazing work that they do to preserve heritage. But that doesn't mean we should be punishing those who are attempting a daunting project like this one.
Thank you, Councillor Marsh. Councillor Ioannidis.
Thank you, Mayor Urbanovic. I'm not going to say too much about this. This is, I think, basically an issue that as long as I've been on council, we've been dealing with. And it's something that I vocally have expressed in the similar sentiment as Councillor Michaud had mentioned, that the heritage is broken. And I agree, but not in the broken in the context that she referred to. I referred to as it's broken in the concept when we can have an outside individuals who can arbitrarily impose such a significant burden on a family who wishes to restore a property, and at the same time, can substitute a roof, but that doesn't make any difference. But then the windows need to be of heritage. To me, it makes absolutely no sense. And again, I feel that's something that I haven't changed in my opinion with this regards. And even having sitting on heritage for a time as well, trying to see the inner workings of how heritage works. And to me, it still boggles my mind on some of the things that we can just arbitrarily want to impose on individuals. Anyways, regardless, I think most of the time heritage does do a good job. So in this case, they did a great job, and it may have not been unanimous, but I think the right decision was made by them, and so this is what I'm looking forward to seeing move ahead.
Thank you, Councillor Ioannidis. Councillor Gazzola.
Yes, I want to start out by really emphasizing that the system is not broken. This community has done a great deal for heritage over the past 30, 40 years. We've lost a number of buildings, like the old city hall, that we would have hoped we would have fought harder to preserve. But we have saved literally dozens and dozens and dozens of properties. We have in this community at least 4 heritage districts, which is something that is special to the community, and I think it draws a lot of people to those areas. So we've accomplished a great deal. I want to emphasize too that staff have been very accommodating to people in dealing with heritage issues from people that want to do things. I know before we had Leon Bensonson, and now we have Victoria Gron here who really do go out of their way. I don't think, and I want to compliment the applicants who are here, came before us tonight. They also came to Heritage Committee, and it was a whole new world for them. But they carried themselves well. They knew all the answers to any question that was posed. But I also think that they did work closely with staff, and staff were very accommodating. And so, and I have seen that over the past number of years, how staff and finally council has been accommodating. Periodically, the odd project does come through to council, but council really hasn't. When you look at the last 2 or 3 years, council really hasn't dealt with very many heritage issues. They've all been dealt with first by staff, and then approved by Heritage Committee, with very few coming forward to council. So, having said all of that, I don't, we want to throw the baby out with the bathwater and all that. We're not perfect. We're not perfect in a lot of things we do, but I think we've done extremely well. And and it's a compliment also to people on both sides of this issue. People like Jean Halbum, who has devoted a tremendous amount of energy over the years, and we have a lot of facilities in our region that are still there, in many ways thanks to her. So having said all of that, when this came to the committee, it was a recorded vote, and I had to vote first, and I voted against the recommendation. And my main thinking was that I would like council to deal with this sort of issue, and if it had been unanimous, it wouldn't have come to council. So I was on the spot. I had to vote no, and that's the way I voted. There are a number of things I want to say about heritage, and to me, heritage, perfect heritage maintains everything exactly the same. I don't go quite that far. To me, if I can see a building that's been renovated, and to me it looks like it would have looked in its charming days, I can go along with that, even if all the materials aren't the same. Any building, from time to time, you have to change things, and you don't have the products when that original building was started, and so you have to change things, and you change them with things that look very much the same or as close to the same as possible. And so that's to me that saves the heritage aspect, even if we can't save the original products in it. To me, there's so much heritage with this property. If someone wants to look and study history, but just to think that it's on the location, those grounds around it, that's where it originally was. So I'm pleased with the process, and I think we've done the right thing. We've had a good discussion on it. There are not a lot of other major items on council tonight, so it was a good night to have a good discussion. And I wanted to also say that I do appreciate the cost that people that want to save heritage buildings incur. I have several in the ward that I represent, and several facilities that have been restored and maintained. So it's not only a question of dollars restoring the property, it's then questions of maintaining it as it goes along. So it is a real hardship on people that take this job on, and it's really interesting to see people with black hair, not white hair, getting involved in these projects, and to show their enthusiasm with preserving something. So Okay, I'll wrap up.
Please, because I've given you extra time already.
No, I know you're so generous to me, Mr. Mayor, and I will not support the amendments or the deferral, but I want to make one other point. One of the things as I was going over this in my head, I think,
Councillor
forgive me.
Gazzola, I'm sorry, you're already 2 minutes over, Councillor Gazzola. You made your points. I'm sorry. Councillor Chapman.
I've got one more. I have one more point I want to make.
Councillor Gazzola. I've already given you
Why
2
do you do this?
minutes. Okay. Thank you, Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, I just want to say that I will be supporting the amendment, and not because I don't appreciate what Brody and Emily are doing, but I feel that there's value in a heritage home that is the only one of its sort in the region, to try and preserve it in a way that replicates the original build. Over and over again at Heritage, cases come to us where the house has been modified in certain ways, and so therefore it's lost its heritage value. And I worry about that happening with the home. Well, they're not the original windows, therefore it's lost its heritage value, and we can demolish it. So not saying that that's what's happening here, but I do think there is virtue to ensuring that heritage is preserved. And I think we all, those of us who have traveled to Europe, one of the most appealing parts of going to Europe is going to those heritage medieval towns and seeing the heritage and embracing it and feeling it. And we don't have a lot of that here. And to preserve it is something that I guess I feel that that's why we have a heritage committee. That's why we have heritage designations. And it's not to dismiss Brody and Emily's intentions. I imagine this is going to fail, but I do think that I have great respect for the people that spoke up in favor of conserving this this home, and so I will support the amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Galloway-Seelock.
Yeah, I don't have too much to add to the conversation. A lot's already been said, but I do appreciate and want to preserve heritage. And I think that the way that this has come out from the Heritage Kitchener committee is the right way to go. I think it's the right approach. It appreciates the heritage value of the home, and this being one of the last, if not the last, building of this time, of this era. I think it's important for us, and it's important for the residents and the owners to make sure that they do a good job, and I think they will. And I'm happy to support the Heritage Kitchener recommendations.
Thanks, Councillor Galloway-Seelock. That appears to be all the comments. I'll just briefly make mine.
Oh, you froze. It's frozen.
For investing in this property and or in its heritage condition going forward. There's no question that this is going to require a significant investment, and the fact that they've been willing to take this on, I concur. It's great to see the next generation of community builders and developers take on projects like this and cherish our community's heritage. Finally, I think for me, the compelling issues here is it's gone through a process. Heritage Kitchener staff have reviewed it against the guidelines and recommended it. Heritage Kitchener, which is the council advisory committee for this, reviewed the arguments and ultimately approved it there. And so I think it only makes sense for us to approve it here and see this project not get jeopardized, but in fact move forward. So I will be supporting it and won't be supporting the amendment. So I'll be dealing with the amendment first. Those in favor?
Sorry, recorded vote, Mr. Mayor, if I could.
Vote. Recorded vote.
Okay, I'll do a recorded vote. So starting with Councillor Davey.
And this is on the amendment, correct?
On the amendment, yes.
Yes, I am opposed.
Councillor Schneider.
Opposed.
Councillor Gazzola.
Opposed.
Councillor Michaud.
In favor?
Councillor Galloway-Seelock.
I'm opposed.
Councillor Singh.
Opposed.
Councillor Ioannidis.
Opposed.
Councillor Johnson.
Opposed.
Councillor Chapman.
In favor.
Councillor Marsh.
Opposed.
And I'm opposed as well. So that motion, the amendment does not carry. We'll now go on to the original recommendation coming out of Heritage Kitchener, and I'll go backwards this time. So Councillor Marsh.
In favor.
Councillor Chapman.
In favor.
Councillor Johnson.
In favor.
Councillor Ioannidis.
In favor.
Councillor Singh.
In favor?
Councillor Galloway-Seelock.
I'm in favor.
Councillor Michaud.
In favor?
Councillor Gazzola.
In favor.
Councillor Schneider.
In favor.
Councillor Davey.
In favor.
And I'm in favor, so that motion carries unanimously. Thank you, everyone, for coming in this evening for this item. We'll now move on to our next delegation under 6C6, and it's Sir-John Vulina with respect to Committee of the Whole Administrative Report Item 2, coming out of our Dog Designation Committee. Welcome.
Sorry, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Good evening, everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Vulina.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, councilors. I hope you're all doing well and staying safe during these tough times with the pandemic and all. I would like to very much thank you for this time to speak on this matter. I'm going to keep this concise and just jump into it. And first and foremost, I want to say I do not agree with the committee's decision that they have made. This is on the basis of, at the time of adoption of my dog Azul, I received a health certificate and a vaccination paperwork from the previous owner, which was signed, stamped, and issued by an Ontario veterinarian from Hamilton, Ontario. This information was deemed inadmissible by the appeal committee due to their assumption that this veterinarian would not be stating the dog's true breed. I, for one, don't understand how the committee can assume that the vet signed paperwork does not include correct breed, as this is their area of the expertise, which they're signing off on. And they didn't provide any evidence or reason of this, but rather they were just speculating the vet's intentions. Second reason that I like to bring up is the breed that makes up of Azul's mix, which is written in the paperwork from the vet. Had a lot of overlap with the identified characteristics of the designation brought up by the Humane Society officer. This was confirmed by the animal control officer himself at this appeal meeting when questioned in regards to these characteristics. And lastly, I like to say that the protocol of identifying quote unquote pit bull type dog is highly subjective and prone to human error. And I provided validation for the statement by providing a reference study from Veterinary Journal, which was also dismissed due to the fact that I'm not a veterinarian, which was quite confusing. That is all the points really I wanted to bring up that are just validify why I disagree with their decision. And
thank you, Mr. Vulina. Are there any questions? There do not. Oh, Councillor Marsh.
Yeah, thanks for coming in and for your patience today. I know you've been there for a long time. I want to ask you, your dog did bite a person. Is that correct? Do you do you think that what do you think should have happened at the Dog Designation Appeal Committee?
That is correct. There was a bite. The dog, as there was probably in the minutes, the dog got out while as he was under the care of my parents, and he gone out, and he saw another dog that was being walked by the lady, the victim, and they believe they got into a scuffle, and her hand got bit in that process. What I believe should happen is he should stay what he stated as a veterinarian and be handed the dangerous dog designation and not the prohibited dog designation, because I just don't understand like why the veterinarian who was an expert in this and signed off like that he's a mix, his opinion doesn't matter just based on the speculations of the vet's intentions.
Okay. I mean, thank you very much for that answer. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Molina. Those are all the questions we have. So we will deal with the issue now. Thank you. So Council, you have the recommendation before you coming from the committee. Does somebody care to move it? Moved by Councillor Schneider, seconded by Councillor Michaud. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Okay, so Mr. Molina, the committee did uphold the recommendation from the committee. We now have two other items in case there are any delegations, but in this environment there isn't, but I guess I should follow the normal process. Notice has been given for any member of the public to speak for or against the bylaw to name private roads within a condominium development located at 142 Rosemount Drive as Dewberry Drive and Roseberry Lane, listed as items 11D and 14D. Is there anyone here to speak to this? Is there anybody here to speak to this? And going a third time, is there anyone here to speak to this? I don't believe there is. So Councillor Davey, I believe that's in your ward. Do you want to move that one?
So moved.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Ioannidis. Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And then the next one is notice has been given for any member of the public to speak for or against the bylaw to name a private road within a condominium development located at 625 Blair Creek Drive as Stonecliff Walk, listed as items 11E and 14E. Is anyone here to speak to this? Is there anyone here to speak to this? And going a third time, is anyone here to speak to this? And there is not. So who cares to move this? Councillor Michaud, seconded by Councillor Marsh. Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. We'll now go on to reports of the committees. Councillor Gazzola, I believe there's one more item in Heritage Kitchener to bring forward.
Yes, there is item number 2 on the committee. It's been moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Chapman. It is also a heritage application that was discussed dealing with the putting of a garage on a property at 172 Queen Street North, and it was approved by the committee with subject to the following condition: that final building permit drawings be reviewed and heritage clearance provided by heritage planning staff prior to the issuance of the building permit.
Thank you, Councillor Gazzola. So it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Any unfinished business? New business? The only thing I'll note, Council, is with respect to from a regional update point of view, two things. Number one, in the regional budget that was approved last Wednesday, we were able to get another 8 locations added in to the for automated speed enforcement. So those will be installed by the end of September, and so that will need to come back to our council at some point to determine which school location we'll be bringing forward. And also there is the second part of the motion was to actually see a remote unit be installed by or be purchased and rotated around by the end of the year. And that report is coming back to regional council later in the year. The other thing of note is that as of today, all of the older adults in our long-term care facilities have had their first vaccines as part of the vaccination process. As you know, there is this week there's not a flow of new vaccine coming, and so the region is managing with the vaccines that they have for people who need to get their second shots in the coming weeks to make sure that those stay valid. So that's my update. Ms. Tarling, before I go to members of council, I see your hand is up.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, just to let you know that there's also audit committee that needs to be passed as part of reports of committee.
Oh, sorry, did I miss that?
Yeah, it's
My
just
apologies.
at the top of the page there.
Okay, you know what, before I do anything else, I will take a motion to Councillor Ioannidis, seconded by Councillor Johnson. Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. So we have next up, Councillor Gazzola.
Yeah, I have two questions dealing with the region. The first one is sort of a selfish question because I'm curious as to what is happening with the vaccine. You say that as of today, all the nursing homes individuals have been vaccinated. Where does one go to learn about the process that's going to be followed, and when their number comes up? Where does one go to?
Sure. So there is information available on the Region of Waterloo website at Region of Waterloo /COVID-19. And there's a page off of that that talks about the vaccine rollout. As you can appreciate, there is the plan, and council, I did email council with a copy of a chart that was sent or that was shared at the last regional council meeting that talks about the time frame when different age groups and different sectors of the community in theory will be vaccinated. Obviously adjustments will be made. I mean, that chart was made prior to the current freeze in the supply of Pfizer for about a week or so. And so there'll be some shifting that happens as a result of that. Although my understanding from last reports is that while there is a temporary delay on the Pfizer vaccine, the quantity that we were expected to get by the end of March will still be coming. It's just coming in a different flow than was originally planned as they make some adjustments at their plant in Belgium in order to ramp up capacity. But it is it is on that regional page, and the chart that I sent to you, Councillor Gazzola, and to other members of council has that information.
Okay, thank you. And my second question is, I know there was a lot of media coverage on it, but I'm still a little bit confused. What was the final tax levy increase from the region?
The final tax levy increase from the region, because there's also some area rating that happens. And if you can bear with me a moment, I will pull that up. If I can come back to you, Councillor Gazzola, by the time we end this, and in the meantime, Councillor Ioannidis can ask. Actually, no, Councillor Johnson is next, and I'll look up the answer to your question. Councillor Johnson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Urbanovic. My question was around the, you just said there's 8 new locations for the automatic speed enforcement cameras. Are they getting more cameras as well, or was that just 8 new locations?
No, so it will be 1 camera. So you'll recall the original plan was that there would be 1 camera rotated around 32 locations. As a result of COVID, that was cut back to 8 locations with 1 camera. It's now going up to 16 locations with 1 camera. But the idea with the remote unit was that that would actually provide a 2nd camera and allow us to pilot that around different parts of the region and see how that works. And that's what's going to come back to regional council later this year.
Okay, so still the same number of cameras, but
same number of cameras, but 16 out of the 16 out of the 32 original locations.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. And next up is Councillor Ioannidis.
Thank you, Mayor Urbanovic. Yeah, I just wanted to touch a little bit on the speed cameras as well, and Councillor Johnson basically touched on what I wanted to ask. I still think it's not enough, but I'll take whatever you can give. And to be honest, I'm not sure why there wasn't more to in the budget, but again, I didn't have the benefit of reading the reports and everything else. So I just want to thank you for that. And then the other question that I have, or I guess would be with regards to the vaccine. And then, so I've been having little trouble like understanding why there is this lack of the Pfizer vaccine, and all you hear on the news is that, but you don't really hear much about Moderna, or why are we not having that supply of Moderna, or why isn't there any other drugs at this point being looked at sooner? Like, you don't hear any of that, so that's all I hear about is the shortage, and I want to hear why, if we haven't looked at any of those, like as a form of government of Canada and all that stuff, what you've heard.
Sure. So on the case, so as you know, Canada so far has approved both the Pfizer and the Moderna. In this region, we have not seen the Moderna come to us as part of the allocations. We've only been getting the Pfizer because the province has been taking the Moderna allocations that they've gotten and taking it to parts of the province that don't have access to the deep freezers that can keep the Pfizer vaccine at the -70 or -80 temperature that's needed to be kept. So, you know, it's certainly foreseeable that as we go forward, this region will get both Pfizer and Moderna going forward as part of our allocations, because that would also help, particularly in some of the rural areas of the region as we administer those vaccines there. And then in terms of other ones, right now, there are some other ones that are being evaluated by Health Canada, but none of them have been approved yet in Canada. And so as those get approved, that will also impact the flow of vaccines going forward.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks. And Councillor Gazzola, going back to your question, the net impact or the end impact in the cities is a 0.57% change on the regional taxes, and that's because we have transit area rated to us, and we don't have rural libraries charged to us, so it's adjusted.
Okay, but that figure absorbs even the increase that there was for police, right? That's the bottom line. It's 0.5%.
That's right. So the percent change in the tax levy at the region was 1.3%. With the police, it was 2.92%. After the assessment growth is taken into account, that brings the region down to 0, the police down to 1.6, and a net impact of 0.51%.
Okay, that wasn't made clear from my reading. It's just I'm a poor reader, so it's okay. Thank you.
Well, it gets complicated, particularly once you start factoring in the area rating and so on. Okay, so just hang on while I bring up my. I guess that was sort of questions and answers too, unless there are any others. Okay, there don't appear to be, so we'll move on to the first reading of the bylaws. It's been moved by Councillor Marsh and seconded by Councillor Galloway-Seelock that leave be given the mover and seconder to introduce the bylaws listed on the agenda, and that the same be taken as read a first time and stand referred to Committee of the Whole. Madam Clerk, are there any additional bylaws?
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. There's one late starter, is an amendment to the Uniform Traffic Bylaw 2019-113 with respect to Rothsay Avenue and Trillium Drive.
Okay, thank you. So with that, all in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. It's been moved by Councillor Gazzola that Council resolve itself into Committee of the Whole. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Councillor Gazzola, over to you for Committee of the Whole.
Yeah, a mover for the second reading of the bylaws, Councillor Galloway-Seelock. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Going on to the committee reports now. The first one that hasn't been dealt with yet is item number 1, the tenders for the Old Mill Sanitary Pumping Station. Someone approved that? Approved by Councillor Schneider. Any questions? I have a question. I would like to know, what does in the report, what does the cash allowance of $950,000, what does that mean? What's that referring to?
So the cash allowance that is included in the report is essentially contingency. So essentially any unknown components within the project, that's what it represents. So it's cash allowance or contingency, and that's what the 950 is.
Okay, so it's a $9 million project with a $950,000 contingency.
That's
included in it.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? All those in favor? I don't see any hands. Opposed? Okay. Okay. That's item now. Item number 3. Someone prepared to move item number 3, the Dune Pioneer Park Community Center Public Art. Councillor Michaud. It's been moved by Councillor Marsh. Any questions? Any answers?
Councillor Davey.
Councillor Davey.
Yeah, thanks. I don't want to take up too much of committee's time. I just wanted to say very quickly that I think this is a great project, and my personal feedback is the more and more we can incorporate public art with an actual functionality like this, I think is fantastic. So kudos to everyone involved.
Councillor Michaud.
And I want to reiterate what Councillor Davies said and just take it one step further. It's finally here in Ward 4, and it feels like it's the last piece of the community center to be done. It's going to be beautiful when it's finished. I was part of the jury, thanking all the jury members, excuse me, the design team and staff that put this together. There was a lot of thought put into it, and all the submissions that went into the contest. There was a lot of really good submissions, but I think everyone in Ward 4 will be happy with this when it's finished. It'll be a great piece and very interactive. Thanks.
Any other questions, answers? All those in favor? All those in favor, hands high. Opposed? Opposed? That's carried. Item number 5. Are there any questions? It's for information purposes, but I have a question if I could. My 2 questions. It's a report on tenders that have been authorized by staff according to the rules we have that allow staff to approve tenders. Is it possible in the future, the budget for the capital projects is shown? Is it possible to include what there is in the operating budgets for the items that relate to operating items?
So to the chair.
It's nice to know. It's nice to know if it's coming in at what we had budgeted, or is there a big difference in what we had budgeted? Or what? So it's just a question of what that figure is.
So typically, the reason we don't identify the operating budget is that in most cases it's across multiple areas. So it may be a number of accounts in terms of the contract that it's related to. All of the operating. I was going to say all of the operating accounts or all of the lines that are listed there are within budget. So it is that there is a sufficient budget to allow the contract to proceed. And because typically operating in general would be a lower value, that's why it's not listed the same as in terms of a capital expenditure normally.
Okay, but if you totaled up all the individual budgets, it would give. My only question is if we budgeted for a certain figure and it comes in 10% more than what our budget was, or likewise, if it comes in 10% less, it's nice to know that.
So back to the chair again. If it was over budget, it wouldn't be on the report. It's only items that are actually under budget. And because it usually is multiple accounts in operating, it would be a bit difficult to add it up. Certainly for items, if it's very clear in terms of the dollar value, we could look at if that's an option in terms of presenting it. But typically it would be a number of accounts, and that's why it's always been presented that way in terms of that report.
The second question I have on a capital project for the auditorium, a new stage, there was a considerable amount of funding, unused funding. Now, why does that funding not go back into the city's capital pool as opposed to being put back into a reserve fund for the auditorium? Those funds came from the city capital pool, so why not unused and unrequired funds? Why are they not returned to that capital fund?
So to the chair, it would be returned to the source that's funded it. So where it's referenced the tax capital reserve, that would be the funding source. If that was the case, it would go back there. If it was the actual auditorium ticket related reserve, it would go back to that. And so I think it's identified both because the funding would return based on how it was originally budgeted and proposed.
Thank you. So if I follow up on that, I will see that the surplus will go back to wherever the funding came from.
It would be the
thank you. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Madam Clerk, that's all of the items that I have. Are there any other items to bring forward?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, there is one late starter coming from caucus today with respect to McLennan Park. that staff be directed to engage consultant expertise in 2021 to undertake a comprehensive review of park amenities and infrastructure at McLennan Park and community engagement in 2021, and to report back to council with the recommendation from this review. And further, that staff bring back recommendations with respect to the replacement of the washroom facilities to council prior to community engagement. And finally, that staff assess the condition and remediation options for the public artwork moments and to recommend to council an approach that addresses maintenance issues.
Are there any questions on this matter? Oh, I have a question. I would have thought that there would have been some discussion about what we're doing here. Now the discussion is not going to happen until the consultant comes back with a report. So what are we hiring exactly? What are we hiring a consultant for? Shouldn't that be brought out into the public venue? What is the purpose of the consultant, and why?
So in response to Councillor Pizzola's question, the consultant is intended to review the condition of the infrastructure within the park and to report back to council and through community engagement in terms of options for, in terms of life cycle of that infrastructure.
Okay, I'll ask another. Do we need to hire a consultant to tell us the condition of the infrastructure? Surely, do we not have knowledgeable staff that could tell us all of this, and we could then move forward from that point forward? And along that line, do we have any idea what a consultation job like this will cost?
So in response to your question, this does require specialized expertise based on the siting of McLennan Park. We're working with the region of Waterloo in terms of some of the unique aspects of the site as a former landfill. And it does require specialized services that staff do not have expertise in. In terms of cost, we anticipate approximately in the $100,000 to $200,000 range. We'll be scoping that, and it is currently funded through the McLennan Park general provision. So there is sufficient funds we anticipate through the capital budget.
Thank you, Councillor Singh.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. As you're raising a point of why a consultant is necessary, just for more clarification, Denise, is it fair to say for a park of this size, the fact that McLennan Park is a district park, a citywide park, and now currently 10 years in since opening up in 2011, that it would be prudent for us to review the infrastructure in the park, and especially the active usage areas like the cycling area and the toboggan hill, to see if there could be better usage from those components.
Yeah, so the review will look at both the condition and state of the assets, but then also look at the user experience and opportunities to look at enhancements within the site, which is why we do want to take a public engagement component to this work to make sure that we're factoring in feedback from residents.
Okay, I just wanted to acknowledge that point. I'll be happy to move this motion when ready.
Okay. Are there any other questions? I don't see any hands up. Any other questions? Any other answers? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Madam Clerk, anything else?
No, Mr. Chair, thank you.
Move that the committee rise and report.
Thank you. It's been moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Chapman that the proceedings and the recorded pecuniary interests and conflicts taken in the meeting of the Committee of the Whole held this evening as attached here to and forming part of these minutes are hereby adopted and confirmed.
All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And it's been moved by Councillor Singh, seconded by Councillor Davey, that the bylaws listed on the agenda for third reading be taken as read a third time, be finally passed and numbered serially by the clerk. In addition to the additional bylaw, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And just prior to Councillor Galloway Seelock moving adjournment, everyone please continue to stay safe, stay healthy, and stay home. And with that, adjournment's been moved by Councillor Galloway Seelock. All those in favor?